When we think of medieval Europe, we picture kings and wars. But the monasteries were the true engines of quiet civilization. They preserved books, knowledge, and, perhaps most importantly for this story, brewing. Even when empires fell, even when armies burned their abbeys to the ground, the surviving monks rebuilt and started brewing again. Because that's what they did. Their beer outlasted kingdoms. And in a way, that's how monks got away with drinking so much of it, because their drinking was part of Europe's survival. Beer kept them healthy. It fed the poor. It funded hospitals and schools. And it offered a small, steady joy in a world that often didn't have many. That's not indulgence, that's quiet resilience. We'll stop here for a moment. In part 4, we'll float into the 18th and 19th centuries, when industrial brewing tried to replace the monks entirely, and how the last few abbeys refused to let their craft die. We'll also see how modern science finally caught up with what the monks already knew. So take a slow sip of something warm, or cold, I won't judge, and when you're ready, we'll continue. When accused of greed, they had a convenient defense: it's for God. And technically, it was. Most profits went to maintenance or alms. Though it's safe to assume the monks enjoyed their test batches along the way. Brewing as community. Inside the monastery, brewing wasn't just about beer, it was about unity. It gave the monks a shared project, a rhythm outside of prayer that connected them through labor. Each step required teamwork and patience. One monk would heat the water. Another would stir. Another measured grain. And when the batch was done, they all gathered to bless it before it went into storage. It's one of those rare medieval activities that blended the spiritual and the practical perfectly, like building cathedrals, but drinkable. The act of brewing gave shape to their days and a sense of purpose to their silence. Night falls over the abbey. After Compline, the monastery went quiet. Torches were dimmed, doors locked. The brewery, though, never truly slept. Fermentation went on in the dark, silent, slow, and invisible. Some monks would check the vats by candlelight, making sure everything was as it should be. It was almost mystical, the unseen transformation of grain and water into something nourishing, alive, and golden. They must have felt a strange sense of kinship with it, both monk and beer, in a way, being slowly transformed by patience and time. And by dawn, the bells rang again. Matins. Lauds. Work. Pray. Brew. Repeat. Day after day, century after century. A taste of continuity. The monks weren't in a rush. Brewing took as long as it needed to. Temperature changes, humidity, even the mood of the yeast, not that they knew what yeast was, all of it influenced the outcome. Sometimes, a bad batch would happen, and they'd quietly bury the evidence in the garden rather than waste time explaining it to the abbot. Evening brought vespers, another meal, and then Compline, the final prayer before bed. And yes, one more mug of beer, because hydration never sleeps. The balance between piety and pleasure. Now, it's worth remembering that monks didn't take vows of sobriety. They took vows of moderation. So while they drank a lot, they rarely drank to drunkenness. That would have been seen as sinful, losing control of the mind that should be focused on God. Instead, they stayed within that hazy, gentle zone between hunger and happiness, comfortably fed, lightly buzzed, spiritually centered. If anything, beer was part of what helped them endure the monastic life, the cold, the silence, the repetition. It wasn't an escape, it was a comfort. And maybe that's the real secret to how they got away with it. They didn't see beer as pleasure, they saw it as fuel for prayer. Beer and the monastic economy. Let's not forget the economics, though. Monasteries brewed far more beer than they needed. The surplus was distributed as charity, served to guests, or quietly sold in nearby markets. The money supported hospitals, schools, and travelers' hostels. Many medieval inns were actually attached to monasteries. Pilgrims could rest, eat, and drink for cheap, all under the church's benevolent eye. Of course, the line between charity and business was thin. Some abbots became quite shrewd entrepreneurs, managing large-scale production that rivaled secular breweries. Being the monastery's brewer was a position of trust. It was usually assigned to a senior monk, someone practical, observant, and unlikely to sample the product too enthusiastically. He oversaw a small team, often including lay brothers, men who weren't ordained but lived and worked within the monastery. They handled the heavier labor, like hauling grain sacks or tending fires. The brewer kept records, measured ingredients, and maintained cleanliness. In an age where everyone else thought disease came from bad air, monks were among the first to realize that dirty barrels led to bad beer. They didn't understand why, but they cleaned anyway, religiously, you might say. Their care paid off. Monastic beer had a reputation for purity. Pilgrims trusted it. Nobles ordered it. And nearby towns quietly relied on it. Midday, meals and small beer. By late morning, the bells rang for terce, another round of prayer. Afterward came the main meal of the day, eaten in silence while a monk read scripture aloud. The food was simple: bread, vegetables, maybe fish or cheese. Meat was mostly forbidden, unless you were sick. And with every meal, beer. Not the strong, malty brew of feast days, but small beer, light, watery, and mild. It replaced water entirely. Each monk might drink several pints over the course of a day, and no one batted an eye. It wasn't seen as indulgent. It was just fluid intake. Some monasteries even had separate beers for different classes of people. The monks got the decent stuff, the lay brothers a slightly weaker batch, and guests or the poor might get whatever was left at the bottom of the barrel. It sounds unfair, but then again, the monks were the ones waking up at 2 a.m. to pray. Afternoon, brewing and balance. After the meal came work again, often in the fields or workshops. Brewing might continue through the afternoon if a batch was in progress. Brewing as prayer. The monks didn't see brewing as a business. They saw it as an act of devotion. Every task in a monastery had spiritual meaning, whether tilling a field or stirring a mash tun. The idea was that manual labor purified the soul through discipline. So, when Brother Anselm leaned over a steaming vat of malt, he wasn't just checking temperature, he was, in his mind, serving God through work. There was even a rhythm to it that echoed the monastic schedule. Mashing took hours. Fermentation required patience. And racking, transferring beer from one vessel to another, took quiet focus. Brewing fit the monk's world perfectly, repetitive, meditative, and producing something tangible that sustained the community. And if it happened to taste good, that was a nice bonus. The brewery itself. Let's picture it. No shiny copper tanks here, just big wooden vats, clay pots, and stone furnaces for heating water. The air would smell like damp grain and smoke. You'd hear the steady bubbling of fermentation, the scrape of wooden paddles, and maybe a few whispered Latin prayers. The monks used simple ingredients: barley or wheat, water, and herbs. Hops wouldn't become widespread until later. Before that, they used grut, a mix of local plants like yarrow, rosemary, or bog myrtle. The result was earthy, bitter, and unpredictable, but nourishing. Each abbey had its own recipe, handed down and adjusted over time. Some even flavored their beer with honey or spices, especially for feast days. It wasn't just about taste, though. Herbs were believed to have medicinal and even moral effects. Some herbs, for instance, were thought to suppress lust, which made them extremely popular among monks. Apparently, nothing kills temptation quite like a pint of bitter bog myrtle ale. The brewer's role. It's funny how history circles back. Because in the 21st century, when breweries brag about sustainability, purity, and small-scale production, they're basically rediscovering what monks were doing 800 years ago with wooden barrels and divine patience. The difference is, monks didn't post about it on Instagram. We'll pause here again. In part 3, we'll drift into the quieter corners of monastic life, what daily routines looked like inside a beer brewing abbey, how monks balanced prayer and production, and how beer shaped their spiritual rhythm more deeply than they ever admitted. So take another slow breath. Let's pick this story back up when you're ready, a day in the life of a beer brewing monk. Hey again. If you've been drifting in and out of sleep, perfect. That's exactly how monks lived too. Their days moved in slow, predictable circles: prayer, work, silence, and brewing. So tonight, let's wander quietly through an abbey somewhere in medieval Flanders, around the 14th century. The bells are about to ring for matins, and the monks, groggy but obedient, are already shuffling into line. It's not glamorous, but it is strangely peaceful. The rhythm of the cloister. The Benedictine day was divided into hours, not in the way we think of them, but as blocks of prayer and labor. They started before sunrise, sometimes around 2 or 3 a.m., with matins, the first set of prayers. Picture a long stone church, candles flickering, a few dozen men chanting psalms in half-sleep. Their voices echo softly against cold walls. Then came lauds, just before dawn. And after that, a small meal or, if it was a fasting day, a cup of, yes, beer. From there, the monks split up to their assigned duties. Some went to copy manuscripts. Some to the fields. And some, the lucky few, to the brewery. It wasn't considered a glamorous posting, but it was valued. The brewery was essential, as much a part of monastic life as the chapel. Doctors, well, medieval doctors, believed beer balanced the humors, soothed the stomach, and purified the blood. Which, given the alternatives, like leeches and mercury, sounds positively healthy. And because beer was made from God's gifts, grain, water, and herbs, it carried spiritual symbolism too. The brewing process itself became a metaphor for patience and transformation. Grain died to bring forth life. Yeast worked invisibly, like divine grace. The result nourished both body and soul. Monks didn't just brew, they contemplated. They watched bubbles rise and thought about salvation. They stirred mash and pondered mortality. They drank deeply, and thanked God for fermentation. Honestly, it's hard not to envy that level of peaceful productivity. A subtle hypocrisy. Of course, not everyone approved. Critics, especially Protestant ones, loved to point out the irony of monks living on beer while preaching moderation. Pamphlets accused them of gluttony and indulgence. Some even described monasteries as alehouses in disguise. But the monks had a defense ready: they brewed not for profit, but for sustenance. They worked with their hands. They prayed between mashings. And they shared their beer freely with the poor. Also, everyone else was drinking beer too, so it wasn't exactly scandalous. In the end, no one could really argue with results. The monasteries provided stable jobs, safe drinks, and a sense of continuity in a chaotic world. If they happened to enjoy their work a little too much, well, that's between them and God. From monks to microbrewers. In an amusing twist, modern craft brewers have started copying monastic traditions: open fermentation, natural carbonation, bottle aging. They call it artisanal. The monks just called it Tuesday. Doctors, well, medieval doctors, believed beer balanced the humors, soothed the stomach, and purified the blood. Which, given the alternatives, like leeches and mercury, sounds positively healthy. And because beer was made from God's gifts, grain, water, and herbs, it carried spiritual symbolism too. The brewing process itself became a metaphor for patience and transformation. Grain died to bring forth life. Yeast worked invisibly, like divine grace. The result nourished both body and soul. Monks didn't just brew, they contemplated. They watched bubbles rise and thought about salvation. They stirred mash and pondered mortality. They drank deeply, and thanked God for fermentation. Honestly, it's hard not to envy that level of peaceful productivity. A subtle hypocrisy. Of course, not everyone approved. Critics, especially Protestant ones, love to point out the irony of monks living on beer while preaching moderation. Pamphlets accuse them of gluttony and indulgence. Some even described monasteries as alehouses in disguise. But the monks had a defense ready. They brewed not for profit, but for sustenance. They worked with their hands. They prayed between mashings. And they shared their beer freely with the poor. Also, everyone else was drinking beer too, so it wasn't exactly scandalous. In the end, no one could really argue with results. The monasteries provided stable jobs, safe drinks, and a sense of continuity in a chaotic world. If they happened to enjoy their work a little too much, well, that's between them and God. From monks to microbrewers. In an amusing twist, modern craft brewers have started copying monastic traditions: open fermentation, natural carbonation, bottle aging. They call it artisanal. The monks just called it Tuesday. Fast forward to today, and there are only about a dozen official Trappist breweries left in the world. Most are still in Belgium, though a few popped up in the Netherlands, Austria, and even the US. To qualify as authentic Trappist, a beer must be brewed within the walls of a monastery, under monastic supervision, and profits must go to charity or the upkeep of the community. Which means that when you sip a Trappist ale today, say, a Chimay Blue or an Orval, you're tasting a direct continuation of medieval monastic brewing. The irony? These beers are now expensive, world-renowned, and sold in trendy bars to hipsters with ironic mustaches. The monks, however, would probably just smile, shrug, and keep stirring their kettles. A note on daily drinking. Now, you might still be wondering, how much were they actually drinking? Even by the early modern period, records suggest that daily allowances remained generous. At some abbeys, each monk was allowed a quart or more per meal. Others set formal limits, though limit is a flexible term when you're refilling your mug under the table. Some monasteries brewed several grades of beer. Small beer, for everyday hydration. Refectorium ale, a slightly stronger version served with meals. Festive beer, reserved for holy days or special visitors. The differences weren't just alcohol level, but also richness, sweetness, and quality of ingredients. Of course, no one wanted to waste the good stuff on novices. That privilege came with seniority and good behavior. So, yes, even monks had beer hierarchies. Because nothing says humility like quietly judging your brother's beverage. Beer as medicine, beer as faith. The monastic embrace of beer wasn't only about thirst or taste. It was also seen as medicinal. Now, it's important to remember, the monks had no concept of yeast as we know it. The word microbe wouldn't appear for centuries. But they knew what worked. They learned to keep using the same brewing vessels, because they noticed the beer fermented better in them. Unknowingly, they were preserving yeast cultures. They noticed that clean water made better beer. So they started digging wells, filtering streams, and even testing local sources. Some monasteries even kept brewing logs, centuries-old records of batch dates, weather, and grain quality. Historians today use those logs to trace the development of European brewing science long before Pasteur ever picked up a microscope. All because a bunch of men in robes wanted something decent to drink after Vespers. Brewing through chaos. It wasn't easy keeping this tradition alive. Monasteries were repeatedly destroyed by wars, raids, revolutions, and, of course, Napoleon, because apparently he couldn't leave anything alone. By the early 19th century, monastic brewing was on life support. Many abbeys were closed or burned. The monks scattered. But, slowly, after the Napoleonic chaos settled, some communities began to rebuild. And with them came their ancient recipes. Rochefort resumed brewing. Chimay restarted in 1862. Westmalle followed. Each of these became a cornerstone of the modern Trappist brewing tradition, small batch, strong, rich Alesh brewed inside monasteries, using centuries of refined technique. The 19th century also brought technology, steam power, better malt production, and cleaner glass bottles, which helped preserve their beer longer. The monks adapted. Quietly, patiently, as they always had. The modern miracle, authentic Trappist beer. Enter the Trappists. Now, if you've ever wandered through a fancy beer aisle and noticed bottles labeled Trappist ale or authentic Trappist product, those are direct descendants of this period. The Trappists were a stricter branch of the Cistercian order, founded in the 17th century in France. They believed that earlier monks had gone soft, that Benedictine monasteries had gotten too comfortable, too indulgent, and too noisy. So they decided to take things back to basics. Silence, simplicity, and, naturally, self-sufficiency. And that meant, beer. Because, again, monks had to make a living. And if you were trying to be isolated, what better way than brewing your own drink and selling the surplus discreetly through the monastery gate? The irony was delicious. The Trappists set out to live lives of poverty and silence, and ended up inventing some of the most famous premium beers on earth. Let's float to Rochefort. Picture a small Belgian abbey. It's the 17th century. The air smells like rain and grain. Inside, the monks of Rochefort are quietly stirring a bubbling vat. Their beer isn't for celebration, it's for sustenance. They drink it during fasts, give it to travelers, and sell a little to fund their charitable works. It's thick, strong, and rich with malt. And because they can't talk much, their vows of silence and all, they perfect their recipes through notes and gestures. Imagine that, centuries of brewing wisdom passed along by nods, scribbles, and the occasional eyebrow raise. These monks didn't just preserve medieval brewing, they elevated it. They refined fermentation temperatures, controlled yeast growth, and learned how to age beer for flavor. Their devotion to discipline made their beer unusually consistent. When most 17th century beers were unpredictable swamps of fermentation, Trappist Alesh were smooth, balanced, and, miraculously, drinkable. A quiet science of fermentation. Their monasteries remained intact, and so did their breweries. In fact, some even expanded. Because when the Protestant breweries vanished up north, their Catholic counterparts quietly picked up the slack. Beer, after all, doesn't care about your theology. Belgium in particular became a kind of brewing refuge. Small abbeys nestled in forests or near rivers kept refining their recipes, passing down knowledge through generations of monks who were more chemists than theologians. And since brewing was considered manual labor, it fit perfectly into the Benedictine motto, ora et labora, pray and work. They took that very literally. Sometimes praying, sometimes brewing, often both at once. So, the 16th century arrives, and Martin Luther decides he's had enough of the Catholic Church selling indulgences like it's a medieval Kickstarter campaign. He nails his famous list of complaints to a church door, and suddenly, half of Europe is arguing about whether monks are still necessary. To be fair, Luther himself wasn't anti-beer. Quite the opposite, he loved it. His wife, Katharina von Bora, was a former nun and an excellent brewer. Their household was reportedly stocked with homemade ale at all times. But the institution of monastic brewing, the big, tax-exempt, land-owning, money-making monasteries, didn't fare so well under Protestant reform. In Protestant regions like England, Scotland, and much of northern Germany, monasteries were shut down. Their lands were confiscated by the crown or local nobles, and their breweries were either destroyed or turned into secular businesses. Henry VIII, in particular, had a personal vendetta against monks. When he wasn't busy marrying the entire population of England, he dissolved monasteries en masse, looting their property and handing out land like party favors. For a while, it looked like monastic brewing might just die out altogether. Meanwhile, in Catholic Europe. But in places where the church still held power, like Belgium, parts of France, and southern Germany, the story was very different. Still, not all beer was weak. On feast days, or for guests, they'd break out the strong stuff. And you can only imagine how chatty Vespers got after that. It's said that some abbots tried to impose limits. But enforcing sobriety in a monastery full of skilled brewers was like asking a baker not to test his dough. Gentle irony, served cold. The beautiful contradiction of medieval monastic life was that they genuinely believed beer was a gift from God. And to be fair, they kind of had a point. Brewing provided nourishment. It kept people alive. It built community. And it offered a quiet, repetitive task that fit perfectly into the rhythm of monastic days: prayer, work, rest, repeat. It was, in many ways, the perfect medieval job, productive, peaceful, and pleasantly buzzed. And even though their brewing would eventually evolve into massive commercial industries, for centuries, monks really did see it as just another form of devotion. An act of craft, done to the glory of God, and perhaps, just a touch, to the comfort of themselves. We'll pause here. In part 2, we'll float deeper into the story, following how monastic brewing survived wars, plagues, and even the Reformation. We'll also peek into how those same monks accidentally laid the foundations for modern beer science, all while technically not breaking their vows. So, settle in. Take a slow breath. And when you're ready, we'll continue, beer through the Reformation and the rise of Trappists. Welcome back. We left off with our monks living the dream, chanting by candlelight, brewing gallons of liquid bread, and managing not to violate too many of their vows in the process. But of course, the Middle Ages didn't last forever. Europe was about to stumble into a period of religious drama, economic chaos, and a few very cranky reformers with a lot of opinions about monks and money. Still, somehow, through all of it, the beer kept flowing. The Reformation ruined the party, mostly. They even got involved in early quality control. Monks had reputations to maintain. If their beer went bad, people noticed. So they experimented, adjusting ingredients, refining fermentation, even documenting the effects of aging. In a sense, medieval monks were Europe's first beer scientists. Just, very pious ones. Let's drift toward Belgium. By the High Middle Ages, around the 12th and 13th centuries, monastic brewing had spread all across Northern Europe. But it really hit its golden age in places like Flanders and modern Belgium. If you've ever seen a bottle of Trappist beer today, those are the direct descendants of these medieval breweries. The Trappists, a branch of the Cistercian order, are still brewing beer today under the same pray and ferment philosophy. The reason Belgium in particular became a brewing hotspot has a lot to do with geography, and monks' impeccable sense of timing. The region had great grain, good water, and no shortage of thirsty townspeople. Even better, the church's property laws often protected monasteries from taxation. Meaning, they could brew, distribute, and profit, without paying the local lord a dime. If you were a medieval abbot with a sharp mind for logistics, you were basically running a tax-free brewery empire. All under the banner of piety. The holy hydration schedule. Let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets delightfully absurd. Records from some monasteries show that monks were allotted between 4 to 6 pints of beer per day. Yes. Per day. That's roughly 3 liters. Enough to make even a modern frat boy blink twice. But remember, this was mostly small beer, with maybe 2 to 3% alcohol at most. It was more like drinking liquid bread than modern beer. So while it didn't get them stumbling drunk, it definitely kept them in a constant, fuzzy state of satisfaction. It was all very organized. And while the rest of Europe stumbled through plagues, wars, and peasant uprisings, the monks just kept brewing. Because nothing says divine stability like a full tankard. A pint of paradox. This is where it gets amusing. Monks were meant to avoid pleasure, yet they created one of Europe's favorite pleasures. They swore off worldly wealth, yet many monasteries became rich, because of beer. And they were supposed to live apart from society, yet their brewing made them central to it. By this time, brewing had become a fine art in many Benedictine and later Cistercian monasteries. They built proper brewing halls, developed recipes, and recorded meticulous notes on grain ratios and fermentation times. In a world that still thought disease came from bad smells, monks were among the few who understood that clean equipment and consistent methods produced better beer. They didn't know the word sterile, but they understood cleanliness mattered. Which meant their beer didn't just taste better, it was safer. And once word got out that monastery beer didn't make you violently ill like the town stuff, people noticed. Soon, pilgrims started dropping by. Then villagers. Then nobles. Monks realized they could make a little money selling their surplus ale. And suddenly, the line between holy duty and small business got blurry. Beer as charity, sort of. Now, monks couldn't technically sell beer. That would have been too worldly. Too commercial. So instead, they gave beer away, to pilgrims, to travelers, to the poor, and received donations in return. Which sounds suspiciously like running a bar with extra steps. The monasteries grew wealthy. Some had entire brewing complexes larger than nearby villages. They produced different beers for different occasions, strong alesh for feast days, lighter brews for daily use, and watery, small beer for servants and lay brothers. The funny thing is, their beer wasn't like modern lager. It was thick, dark, and often full of floating bits of grain. It probably had the texture of oatmeal that had given up on life. But in a world without multivitamins, this was good stuff. They even called it liquid bread. Which, if you say it confidently enough, almost sounds healthy. Let's float over to a monastery in Germany. Imagine, it's the 9th century. You're walking through a cold, misty valley. Bells are ringing in the distance. Inside a stone building, a group of men in brown robes are chanting softly. And somewhere nearby, something's bubbling. It's the brewery. If you've ever glanced at the Rule of Saint Benedict, the go-to guidebook for monastic living in Europe, it's full of stuff like, "Thou shalt be obedient," and "Thou shalt live modestly." But buried in all that pious Latin is a line about drink. Benedict, who lived in the 6th century, understood that monks were human. So he didn't outright ban alcohol. Instead, he said something like, "Let everyone have his own measure of drink, but not to excess." Which, to a monk with a beer mug in hand, translated roughly to, "As long as we're not passed out, it's fine." He suggested about a hemina of wine per day, which, by later estimates, would be around half a liter. Not terrible. Except many monasteries quietly converted that wine quota into beer. And beer, well, it was easier to make, easier to justify, and much easier to stretch into several hemini if one happened to get thirsty. And thirsty, they were. Why monks brewed in the first place? The earliest monasteries were self-sufficient. They grew food, kept animals, copied books, and yes, brewed their own drinks. It wasn't about recreation, at least not officially. Brewing was a necessity. Beer provided calories, nutrition, and hydration in one foamy package. Think of it as medieval protein shake meets breakfast smoothie. In fact, during fasts, like Lent, when monks couldn't eat solid food, they leaned on their beer even more. Because liquid didn't count. And that's the kind of logic that lets you survive a 40-day fast while still downing 2 liters of ale a day. So, people drank small beer. Not because they were trying to get buzzed, but because it was safer than drinking whatever questionable puddle ran past the town gate. Even kids drank it. Pregnant women, too. Basically, the entire continent was on a permanent, low-level beer diet. And into this bubbly mess of medieval hydration came the monks. They were supposed to live simply. Humbly. Spiritually. But, as it turns out, simple also included a warm cloister, a nice vegetable garden, and, oh yes, access to endless ale. Monks didn't just drink beer, they perfected it. And the reason they got away with it is one of those delightful medieval contradictions that makes you wonder whether anyone actually read the rules. Monastic rules, technically strict, conveniently interpreted. How did monks get away with drinking so much beer? Hey everyone! Welcome back. Go ahead and dim the lights. Maybe pull your blanket a little higher. Tonight, we're drifting back, way back, to a time when Wi-Fi didn't exist, everyone smelled faintly of livestock, and monks were absolutely hammered. Yes, tonight's sleepy little journey is about something oddly comforting, beer. Not modern craft beer with ironic labels and citrus hops, but the thick, murky, vaguely bread-flavored medieval stuff that monks made, drank, and somehow justified, all day long. So, if you've ever wondered how a bunch of supposedly sober holy men managed to become the backbone of Europe's brewing industry, without getting smoked by divine lightning, well, get comfortable. Because we're going to spend the next hour or so floating gently through the monasteries of the Middle Ages, following the steady scent of malt, devotion, and mild intoxication. Let's start with a sip of context. The holy origins of booze. It might surprise you to know that in medieval Europe, alcohol wasn't just tolerated, it was practically considered a vitamin. Water, you see, was sketchy. It was fine if it came from a clean spring, but most people lived near human settlements, which meant you were one frog corpse away from dysentery at any given moment.